Okay. Sorry. Okay. So how are we gonna do this? We're gonna do orange, blue, orange, blue, orange, blue, orange, blue, orange, blue.
Sure.
Okay. I've never done this before.
Me neither.
Is that true? I think that's true. I don't think I've ever done this before.
I think you'd remember.
I didn't look up anything about, like, I could have easily Googled and prevented a bunch of mistakes I'm about to make, and people are gonna be like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah, me neither. I don't I don't think any of us prepared. And I think it's better that way.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first question, I guess.
Is sit down. Sit down.
Sit down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Cullen. I'm here with Vile and Lexi. Solius is using the bathroom. We're in the office. We've gotten a little better about not coming into the office on Saturday.
All right, first question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How strong is Holly?
How strong is Holly? Yeah. So this question was like on a scale of 1 to 20.
Yep.
How strong is Holly? And my answer to that question is you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking how strong are Holly's friends, because she is not particularly especially strong. She has lots of special friends.
She pours the drinks.
Yeah. All right, so I don't think I did it right.
You got a bit of your finger there.
Well, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, but it looks translucent. Am I supposed to put it on thicker?
I don't know. Maybe wait for it to dry.
Yeah.
We could just.
It looks like but it doesn't look like it's going to dry in a especially good way. But if I just glop it on there now, it's like really thick. Is that right?
I have no idea.
think that's right.
I truly do not know.
Lexi.
She doesn't know either.
I need help. Will you look up how do you paint your nails? You're going to get a website for like 11-year-olds.
You might be missing a base coat.
Oh, are you supposed to do that?
You don't need it for every nail polish or nail paint.
What? No.
Let's see if they're like instructions.
Instructions. I did get this from Claire's, which is like a store for children.
Yeah.
Well, this looks bad, but I'm just gonna leave it alone, I guess.
We'll just see what it does.
Yeah. You came over and looked to try and like be encouraging, like, no, it doesn't look that bad, and then you saw it and you had nothing to say.
I would not be able to do better.
I'm gonna try to clean it off my skin, I guess.
Your skin's your skin, and it'll just like fall off, I imagine.
But will it bring the rest of?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna do a blue one now, I guess.
All right.
All right.
Next question.
Oh, that's right. We have 10 questions, and I have the same number of fingers.
For now. Okay. Next question. Can I go into a dungeon monster's dream?
Can I go in? All right. So can. Okay. I forgot who asked this, but
Should we be giving credit?
nah, it doesn't matter. So no, not in the way that I think this person means. You can't go into a dungeon monster's dream because in the dreaming, because the dreaming is specifically the dreams of willful creatures. So you could enter a sleeping monster's dream, but you'd have to cast the spell dream to do so, because the spell dream works differently than Daisy Walk, which I think is what they're talking about. However, I was thinking about this question, and I like this question because it has some cool implications for kobolds. Because kobolds are the only ones in the world who make the transition between non-willful and willful. And that means that if the world is consistent, which I'm going to say canonically it is in this case. This looks even worse. If the world is consistent, then kobolds actually, their dreams become part of the dreaming later on in life, even like in adulthood. So the implications are really interesting, because something that we talk about in the book about the dreaming is that you see the Sealy cord, right? Because that's kind of the point. That's why it's there. Sorry, I am left-handed. This is a task. I should have had someone do it for me.
It's not too late. Lexi and I are here.
That feels very indulgent. It's like, paint my nails. Like I'm Queen Victoria.
Oh, Lyle, you can do it. You're not doing anything for it.
It is true. I am sitting here.
Got him.
It's true. I am sitting here.
This looks terrible. This looks like a baby did it. When my sister was, I have two sisters, and when my younger of my two sisters was real young, like I think 3 or 4, she got into my mom's nail polish, and her nails looked a lot better than mine do right now. Well, hang on a sec. I'm gonna see if I can wipe it off a little bit.
You got too much on there?
Just a miserable job. Like,
I should have grabbed the cotton.
you know what I don't have is any nail polish remover. How do I? Okay, I'm just gonna, yeah. Someone who watches this is gonna be very frustrated through this whole thing. Yeah, it looks great. Moving on.
Next finger?
Good enough. Ship it.
All right.
Wait. No, I want to finish answering that question. So, so kobolds. Kobolds in the dreaming. Kobolds enter the dreaming sometimes in adulthood. So they remember possibly a time when their dreams weren't part of it, and therefore weren't connected to the Sealy cord. We talk about it in the book about how everyone's dreams all the time have the Sealy cord somewhere in the background, but no one ever talks about it because it's for all your dreams from when you're a baby, and you just don't even recognize it. It'd be like making a note of the fact that you have hands in a dream. It's that sort of natural. But for kobolds, that's not true. So I wonder if there are kobolds who bring up a lot. Like, do you guys also get that weird green building in your dreams?
Sealy cord confirmed green.
Well, yeah, it is green.
All right, middle finger.
Yeah, let's go.
Next question. What is your favorite character in the Beast World?
What is my favorite character in the Beast World?
Yep.
Good question.
You picked this. Why did?
Yeah, I didn't think about it. I knew it was a good question, but I didn't think about my answer. My favorite character in the Beast World is yours.
Oh.
Oh.
No, that'd be so lame.
Mine specifically.
No, yeah, yours in particular. Oh, that actually worked. That was
Celius
quite a
back.
bit. Hi, Celius.
Hi.
Just I'm going back to the first one now, and I'm looking, and it's just
Show the camera.
God.
You're doing it
I am like always.
All right,
Just
yeah,
the
yeah.
worst job.
Don't judge yourself so harshly.
It's also my first time ever, I guess.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so easy when you're using your left hand. Think about it.
Yeah, maybe. I'll also have 5 fingers of practice, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
So right, favorite character?
okay, favorite character.
And it's not yours. We've ruled that out.
Stella comes to mind. Orster. Favorite characters.
You do like Oyster.
I do like Orster quite a lot. He is precious to me. Man, there's a lot of characters. I'm trying to like. I have like first, because I think a lot about. I had to think a lot about Stella, and Orster has been in our D&D game for a long time, so I think a lot about Orster. Orster and Alvar, the brothers. Yeah, for now. Well, I mean Vincent. Love Vincent. Vincent's like really complex guy. A lot of competing motivations in Vincent. What I like about him is his motivations for doing stuff, like just for his like main force pushing him through life, has changed several times through his life, and you can still see the remnants of all those different phases of his life in how he is now, in this, like the sort of things that he does and why. You can see the military general, and you can see the ex-pirate, and you can see the criminal and like his knowledge of the criminal element. I like him for that.
I think I probably would have answered the same thing for like, what is my favorite? Like, what is your favorite like character that isn't just like, you know, our characters?
Yeah.
Love Vincent.
What about you, Rat?
Oh,
What's your favorite character of the Beast World?
Stella and Bryce. I mean, you already
Stella and
said
Bryce.
it, but, yeah,
Really?
Absolutely.
Stella and Bryce are good. We give them a lot of time in the book.
Yeah.
I think they have more pages about them than anyone else.
I think that's probably.
Yeah.
Stella and Bryce are good to me because I like that they serve a couple of different purposes. I like portraying their relationship because Bryce is a brethren and Stella is not. So I got the chance to kind of talk about how, or to kind of demonstrate without talking about it, how casual it is to have brethren around, and how like how much they've folded into the Beast World. All right, next question. I'm going on to my index finger. This is the one that is the most important for me to get right.
I believe.
Sure, yeah. I mean,
All right. What do kobolds and dragons think of each other?
okay, I love this question. What do kobolds and dragons think of each other? There's a lot of different. There's a. Oh God. There's a lot of different.
Speak up.
Hang on. There's a lot of facets to this question because we talk in the book, and this is kind of like something where you have to remember that the stuff that happens in the book, you're learning about it for the first time, so it's immediate for you. But a lot of the stuff in the book took place like a really, really long time ago, and it took place in a place that like no one's ever been, including almost all kobolds. I don't want to say all, but virtually all kobolds have never seen the ancestral homeland. Ancestral homeland kobolds and Beast World kobolds is just different, unless one migrates from the ancestral homeland to the Beast World, which, I mean, that it even happened even once is super rare and wasn't supposed to happen. So if it happens again, that's like the very rare thing happening again. So it doesn't happen very often. So my point is, you might think that, you might assume that dragons see kobolds as like, I don't know, like if you wanted to like, a neutral reading of it would be like their creations, an uncharitable reading would be like their great mistake, some might think. But the truth of the matter is, most dragons that you'd meet in the Beast World have no organic opinion. And I say no organic opinion because one of the things that makes this question so interesting, wow, I'm making it worse now. This is one of those tasks where you need to do it once, I think, and then leave it alone. And I'm not good at that.
You're a writer. You edit.
He looks so bad. All right. Anyway, so kobolds and dragons. The question, what do kobolds and dragons think of each other, is interesting because dragons adopt. Well, I mean, we say explicitly in the book, but I will reiterate and emphasize the importance of dragons getting their worldview from their parents and from their lineage. If you are playing, I would go so far as to say that if you are playing a dragon in the Beast world, you either don't know who your parents were, and that's your backstory, or you know all the names of the dragons that came before you back to the ancestral homeland and beyond. Because lineage is so important to every one of them. Like, and it's something that, like, obviously it manifests differently for metallic families and chromatic families. Chromatic families, it's obviously like a gesture of supremacy, right? It's like, I'm part of this dynasty, right? Where, you know, I wear it with pride and I talk about the great deeds. But even on the metallic side, they have a more, benevolence is the wrong word, but it's sort of like a more pure sort of enthusiasm for their own families, like, and what their families have learned. In the case of scholar dragons, like what their families were involved in terms of study, or the great heroism of generations past. But the reason I bring that up is because chromatics in particular, chromatic dragons, I think, would often have a very performative hatred for kobolds, an opinion that doesn't belong to them. If you've ever met someone who is like who's like a fourth generation American, there are some people who are like fourth generation Americans. They have really strong opinions about stuff from their country, and it always and well, not always, but like it can ring kind of strange, right? Because like you don't have any firsthand experience with living in, say, Poland or whatever. Poland, just an example of this. And in Chromatic Dragon's case, this is a performative bigotry against kobolds, and especially willful kobolds. I think especially willful kobolds, because I don't think that there are very many chromatic dragons who believe that there are willful kobolds. Because they've heard the stories of kobolds getting together in groups of 20 or 30 and outsmarting their grandparents, who are, you know, and they don't tell the story like that, but that's the implication of the story, and they know. So they know that these creatures, like, they get in places where they're not supposed to be, and they, you know, they'll fool you about stuff. That's how they see them. They don't see them as industrious. They see them the way we see bedbugs. Once you have them, you never get rid of them, and they're a pest, they're a nuisance that lasts forever.
They get into everything.
Yeah. So I imagine a lot of chromatic dragons just see, again, like they perform this hatred, and they sort of convince themselves of it, that they're just pests and beneath them. I don't think the reason why I'm specific about this is because this question is the implication of this question is kind of do they see them as servants, right? Like that's the trope. People like dragons and kobolds are like the minions of dragons, and I'm sure that relationship does exist in the beast world. There definitely are dragons who round up a bunch of kobolds and then have them run their place.
Lyle's one of them.
Do their laundry.
Kobolds, I think that unless you are So the way that I see we're talking about non-willful kobolds here. Willful kobolds, who knows? Like all willful creatures, they're we contain multitudes, and like who knows what you could say? It depends on where they're from and like all these other little things. Non-willful kobolds, however, have some more consistent traits, and one of their consistent traits is that they're easily bored. They get bored with rewards quickly. If you gave a bunch of non-willful kobolds an entire castle filled with gold, they would get bored with gold within the same day. That is to say, having kobolds around as your minions is dangerous because they need novelty in their shinies, if you will. So unless you're willing to be constantly devising new ways of fooling 32 kobolds into, believing that this particular rock is shinier than all the others. And I'm sure that there are dragons who have figured this system out. I'm sure that there's a wide enough circle that you could just have 20 or 30 different types of rewards and then go back to the first one they would have forgotten. No. And then you just go back to like pearls are the most valuable thing in the world. So for that reason, I don't think that they're not very loyal, because loyalty is kind of a trait of willful creatures for the most part. Loyalty is a decision. It's an active decision not to do what you want to do, right? Like loyalty, you don't even notice loyalty until, like as a character trait, until it's a question of, are you going to do what you would automatically do, or are you going to do something for this person? And now you're getting into the essence of what a willful creature is, right? Because the definition of, like, a way of looking at the definition of willful creatures is, are they capable of doing something not automatically? Are they capable of deciding to be different than how one would expect or how they were created? So how do willful kobolds feel about dragons? I think a willful kobold would probably resent the question, because a willful kobold would probably be keen on the leading nature of that question, right? Like, you want me to talk about some history that I don't know anything about, that is from the perspective of a type of creature that I am not. That would be like if I asked a human how they feel about bananas or picking bugs out of their friend's hair. Like, I don't know. I'm not an ape. I understand, like, and the time scales are obviously very different, but if like an alien came here and like we're on like a different time frame than us, and they lived, billions of years, and they saw us as just like, the grandchildren of apes, they might ask us that question. We would be confused or resentful at that question, like, because the implication is we are apes, and we don't want to be seen as apes, obviously. Like, and especially for kobolds, because willful kobolds have a tough life. Willful kobolds are that people assume a lot of things about them. They have to demonstrate that they're willful constantly to keep people from, assuming that they are animals. Like, it's akin to like if you were a talking dog, and if you were a willful dog, you would have to be constantly demonstrating that you're not just a dog, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. And there's a lot of character concepts in that, and I want to get into that more. I want to get into one of the short stories I want to write. If I write, I had this idea for an anthology of short stories, or anthology is the wrong word, compilation of short stories, because I would write them all. And one of the ones I definitely want to write is a short story from a first-person perspective of a kobold gaining willfulness and kind of listening to their thoughts as they sort of open their eyes for the first time and see themselves and name themselves. Okay, that was a long one. All right, next one.
All right. Do different species have their own neurotypes? Does
Oh, okay, this
ADHD
is a big one. Yeah.
Should I read the rest of it?
Yeah, read the rest of it.
Does ADHD, autism, etc. exist as a concept in the beast world? Give me a sampler of who you consider ND, neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent, yeah. So Keanox asked this question. And I think it's... Sorry, this is the last one that I'm going to have to concentrate this for. I think this question is amazing. And it also, the reason I didn't answer it in the Ask the Devs forum is because it brushes elbows with one of the topics that a lot of tabletop settings, especially Dungeons, specifically Dungeons and Dragons settings, a lot of TTRPG settings sort of drop the ball on, which is how much agency does a person have? You get into questions of like biodeterminism. That's the word. How much does what you are determine who you are? And that's obviously that's a fraught subject socially, because that is, and justifiably so, because that is the statement, they are like this because they're different from other people, is a statement that has been used to hurt people in the real world, and that's an understatement. Like that is a statement that's been used to commit atrocity, like in the not too distant past. So obviously we have a responsibility to keep that in mind as we answer questions like this. That said, I thought it would be a missed opportunity if I just went the route of not engaging with the question of living with different species at all, that is very much the direction that Dungeons and Dragons is going. They're going, and like the good thing that's coming out of this is that they're getting rid of the word race, obviously, right? Because race is like, that's the definition of race is everything I just talked about. It's the way that you're different because of what you are. Mm-hmm. It's how you are because of what you are. And it's a bunch of bunk science and whatever. I'm not going to soapbox about it, but they're going the direction of not engaging with the ideas of different biological species living together. They're going, and there's nothing wrong with that decision. There's nothing wrong with the decision of just saying orcs and elves and gnomes and dwarves and humans, they're all the same. They're in terms of how they are innately. They're just different peoples. They're different. What's the new word for race? Is it lineage?
Pretty sure they're using species.
No. I'm talking about the word that they used for subrace. You choose one, and it's what gives you your abilities for. I think it's lineage, yeah. But anyway, I digress. What they're saying is all these different races, if you will, the D&D races, are the same, and in terms of mental capacity and how they think about stuff innately, it's all nurture. And I think that is not socially irresponsible. It's not particularly brave. It's sort of a non-statement, right? The only kudos you would earn for that would be, oh, you're not making the mistake. But it's also not really internally consistent. It doesn't make sense, not to me, because it falls on its face the moment you consider that one of these identical peoples that we are talking about lives for 1,000 years. And the idea of me saying to you, The only difference between elves and humans is that elves live 1,000 years and never sleep. And otherwise, they're completely mentally identical in terms of their chemistry and, you know, their tendencies. That's silly. That feels like willfully ignoring what would be the reality, right? So all that is to say, that's why Homeland. That's why Homeland. We've gotten some flack for saying anything about different species and behaving differently in different homelands, and two different species in the same homeland acting differently. People have said, like, why aren't the crux of it is, why aren't the homeland bonuses generic to species? And the reason why the homeland bonuses aren't generic to species is because it is the answer to my question, to the question, do they have different neurotypes? The answer is yes. They do have different neurotypes. They have different, just the same as the animals they come from have different neurotypes. The socialization, left alone of any other like stimulus, the socialization of different animals is different. The key, in my opinion, the way you avoid falling into this pit of biodeterminism and kind of like echoing racist statements is avoiding value judgment. And I thought about that a lot when I was writing the species outlines and the homelands. In particular, in Vinyo, because Vinyo is the homeland that has the most friction when it comes to, Oria has it too, to some extent. Alamance has it too, to some extent. But Vinyo and the Tenebrines, in particular, have the most friction when it comes to the biological affecting the culture. And we talk about the ways that is relevant. Specifically, it's, Tenebrines are only awake at night. And it's reductive to say this because there's a lot of there's like centuries of, other factors and individual bigots who get a big voice. There's a lot of like fiddly bits there. But the basic crux of it is Tenebrines are only awake at night, and nighttime is when dangerous things come out. So therefore, Tenebrines must be dangerous. Tenebrines are not worse than Vulpines for coming out at night. Like it would be strange to think that, looking at it from an outsider's perspective, right? Like you wouldn't think that a nocturnal creature would be inherently predisposed to crime. That's what I mean by value judgment. You don't say they are criminals because they think their brains think about ownership differently. I'm casting shade at Kender right now, but because that's in a way that's kind of historically been the thing for Kender in the I think Dragonlance. Kender's Dragonlance. That's not true of Tenebrines, and we talk about why Tenebrines become criminals. They could become criminals for the same reason anybody else does. It's cultural, and they're not more likely to be criminals in a vacuum. And in fact, I think we even talk about how if there's two criminals caught and one of them is a Vulpine and one of them is a Tenebrine, people will say, those Tenebrines, despite the fact that it's like, the robbers were literally a fox and a raccoon.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, they do have different neurotypes. To answer the first part of the question, that's why wolves need people around, because they are inherently more social creatures. Their brain chemistry changes faster when they're alone, and changes differently when they're alone than other species. Now, let's talk about ADHD and autism and these diagnoses. Why do these diagnoses, and does the basic of the question, the gist of the question is, does the field of psychology exist in the beast world as we know it? And my answer to that question is no. The reason, and I have a couple different reasons for that. The kind of boring answer is that ADHD and autism and these conditions that, these neurodivergent conditions are, their definition is rooted not in behavior, but in neurochemistry. When we say someone has autism, we are not saying, oh, they're predisposed to act a certain way. They have a bunch of behaviors. In fact, it's very much in the popular conversation right now that it's difficult to do that. It's there's a fun joke on Twitter right now about this TV show, The Good Doctor, because it portrays, I don't want to get into my judgment about it, but because it portrays a person who is autistic as being very, stereotypically autism.
Superpowered.
Yeah, no, exactly. They lean into the trope of the autistic savant, where oh, he might be weird, but he's a genius in this one specific thing, and for him, it's surgery. I don't like that it's reductive. Wow, so brave. That's the whole point of this, Twitter trend or whatever. But the point of that is the autism spectrum exists as a concept because you can't just say all people with autism do blank. The definition of autism is about brain chemistry. It's about different. I don't know exactly. I'm not a neurochemist, but it's about a difference in how chemicals flow through your brain. And it's the same with ADHD. It's the same with depression. Any neurodivergent condition is based on categorizing people whose neurochemistry flows a little bit differently. And we do that because of our environment. We wouldn't have a need for a diagnosis for ADHD if the world looked radically different, because you wouldn't notice the differences and they wouldn't need that classification. The same way that sort of neutral things that might be correlated with brain chemistry, we don't have a word, or at least not in the popular consciousness, we don't have a word for people who tend to get up very early in the morning that we use as a medical diagnosis, popularly. That does exist. It's diurnal, diurnal, but that's not considered a condition in the same way that autism is, right? So basically they don't have it because they don't have neurochemistry they don't have the foundational sciences, most importantly microscopes. They don't have germ theory, and they don't know what's going on with their own bodies on a minute level enough to have those diagnoses. The more interesting reason why these, I don't want to say these diagnoses exist, is because if I say, yes, autism exists, and characters 1, 2, 13, 45, and 61, those are the autistic characters in the beast world, I have taken something away from my audience by doing that. I've taken away the ability, or I haven't taken it away, but I've reduced the ability for people to feel represented by characters that aren't those ones, right? If the way that I act as a person with autism, if the way that I act is sort of mirrors the way a certain character acts in the book, and I feel represented by them, and I feel empowered by that character existing in the book, I love that. I want that, and I want to strive to put as many different character archetypes in my work that people can find someone who's like them and feel seen, I guess is how you would say it. But if I just make the decision for you, and this is like the reason why I don't say a lot of things that I don't say that I'm asked. If I make the decision for you, you can't make it differently. I have a power to shape the objective world of the setting in a way that can clarify cool things, but it can also harm the potential for creativity. And that is more important to me than designating, who has autism or who has ADHD. That said, the third part of this question, give me a sampler of who you consider to be neurodivergent. I think Orster came up in that conversation at one point. I don't like Orster for sure. Like I would see Orster as kind of neurodivergent because from my perspective, as someone with ADHD, I see some of myself in Orster as someone who is a little bit secluded from the world around him, and as finding a hyperfixation and having that hyperfixation change a lot, and it sort of creates a discipline around him, right? Orster is a wheelwright, but or rather Orster is a Wainwright, but only because the things that he's interested in and his hyperfixations just sort of accidentally created all of the skills that are necessary to be a Wainwright. He's not specifically passionate about wagons. He's just happens to be passionate about all the things that happen to make him a great Wainwright, which is great for him. And lots of neurodivergent people in the real world have that sort of accidentally happen to them. I am one of them. I am lucky that my hyperfixations about things like, the minutiae of medieval life and mathematics and stuff like that happened to create a skill set that, I hope lends itself well to rewriting good books. I'm going to pretend it is and keep doing it. But yeah, that would be my answer. But I'm more interested to hear yours in this case. The royal yours. Okay, that was another long one. Next.
I was worried
Okay.
about me specifically. We spent a long time on that one. Okay, Val, your turn. All right, let's see.
All right, so now I have to use this hand.
I think that's fine.
Oh my god. It's not quite. Oh, this is where I do this.
That is the time, yeah.
Oh man, I'm feeling so gay right now. I love it. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do this too. Yeah. All right. Next.
Next. How does one become a war mage?
How do you become a war mage? So that's a question about politics. You are asking the same question as someone who asks, how do you become an agent of the CIA? Which is to say, the answer is you get good at the stuff that they do. You are and there's more to it than that. There are plenty of really talented mages in Oria that are not in the war mages. Because it's about more than skill, it's also about opportunity and who you know, being politically connected. Generally speaking, you are friends with your Batco, and are useful to your Batco. Being useful on the hunt, I imagine, is a great way to demonstrate yourself to the amorphous eyes that watch from the war mages. And you get tapped for it. There's no open, like, you can be an agent of the CIA by going to a job fair. They go to job fairs. You can go and demonstrate yourself. You can take tests and stuff. Like, you can get in that way. But that was not always true. That wasn't true for during the Cold War. And instead, they would pick people who were already in the military and were already good at the type of stuff that the CIA was doing. And so it is with the War Mages. It helps to know someone. You probably knew someone. If you didn't know someone, that is a statement. Like, if you came out of nowhere and joined the War Mages, some people would look askance. Like, they would think that was a little sus. But other people would see that as a sign that you are the real deal. This person came out, nobody knows who this person is, and they just show up. They must have something special that that the structure of the War Mages saw to just sort of scoop them into it. That's a good answer. Good for me. I'm almost done with this.
If you're still on that one, I wanted to mention. I don't think we told people why we're doing this.
Oh yeah, I guess we didn't. So during I think it was during the Kickstarter. No, it was right before. I think it was days before the Kickstarter launched. We were talking on the server, and someone asked if there was going to be a stretch goal where I would paint my fingernails. And I said, no stretch goal. If we fund, I will paint my fingernails. And we funded. Thank you. So here I am, keeping that promise, albeit, like a couple weeks late.
You're busy.
I was I was busy. I don't owe you anything.
I'm pretty sure that's demonstrable.
Yeah, that's quite false. Man, they look so bad. I'm gonna practice this. This is something I want to get good at.
Sure.
Or I'll forget about it and move on to a new thing. All right.
Next one.
I look like a clown.
I love it.
It's clownish. Alternating was a bad idea.
You think so?
Yes, it looks like the stripes on a clown's outfit.
You're in too deep
Clownish?
They will match your shoes.
now.
Celia said they'll match my shoes.
No.
That's a good thing. The colors are the same.
Lexi's left the room because my nose is about to start bleeding. Celius has been making fun of my shoes since I put them on outside of the shoe store. He has been carefully not making fun.
The audience doesn't have context.
Yeah, so I have orange shoes. I'll put a picture of it in the video here. But I have orange shoes. I thought they looked. I don't know. There was a gas leak in the shoe store. Okay, and I thought it was a good idea at the time.
I love them.
He's been making fun of me.
I've never noticed your shoes a single
Not
time.
once. No,
I've
you've just
not
brought it up
actually.
all the time. You've commented on them a lot.
Compliment.
Yeah. No, they look great. They look great. Love those. Great shoes. No, great.
Easy to wear.
Oh yeah.
It's.
I love that they have the Goodyear logo on them. That's great. These are all things that he said. All right, next question.
Such a good double entendre. Do I look like a clown? Well, they match your shoes. So good. All right, let's see. How did military policy change after the Invader War?
Oh, cool question. Okay. So, he would never admit it because it would be very, very unpopular to say, but you know who loved the Invader War? The Bay. And the reason why the Bay...
I was going to say Vincent.
I saw those.
No, not Vincent. I think Vincent would much rather still be doing what he was doing before. No, the Bay got the most out of the Invader War because the Beylik was already equipped to keep themselves safe from the Invader War, and that's why they saw the fewest casualties. It was easiest for them to make it not worth it to invade Arneria, because they already had a lot of standing military. They have like, I don't want to say a militaristic society. They had a more militaristic society than other homelands, and especially Vineo. That's why the invaders landed in Vineo, because Vineo. If you think about it in terms of civilization, the video game Civilization.
Yeah.
In Civilization, there's a lot of ways to play and win. And one of the ways to play and win Civilization is as an economic power. And you can kind of just not build units, and the time and money you would spend building units, you spend building things that make you more money and make you more prosperous. And that is a pretty good analog for what got Vineo into trouble. After the Invader War, obviously, there is friction. We talk about friction between mercenaries and delvers after the Invader War. But also there's friction between people who would like military protection to be a function of the state, as opposed to military protection being a function of criminals and weirdos and people in wagons. It's a weird world. And there are a lot of people who think that, well, I really screwed this one up. I've got blue in this one. There are people who think that delvers are a liability. And part of the reason for that is there hasn't been, because delvers came on the scene so quickly after the Invader War, and the dungeon happened, and there was distraction. There was distraction from the idea of constructing a military to make sure this doesn't happen again, right? There was more other things going on, and they just never got back around to it yet. Some people noticed that, and they're like, no, we can't depend on delvers if some other species lands on the shore and tries to take us over. We are still not prepared. The homeland that has listened to that closest is Alamance. And part of that is because Queen Sophia fought directly in the Invader War. And moreover, all that stuff with Laurent went down during the Invader War. One of her closest advisors, Laurent, turned out to be not so great. And that was a failure, if you want to look at it as such, of her intelligence apparatus, right? Because a better intelligence apparatus literally in Louvain Palace would have seen Laurent getting ready to Howl's moving castle out of there and leave the castle to be taken over. So that said, Sophia, knowing these things, having fought in the Invader War and seen what being underprepared looks like, and also being directly embarrassed by Laurent's turncoat, now we have the levies. Now we have this statement from on high that says, you're going to get people ready and have them ready, martially inclined, in case this ever happens again. The difference, and I think I put it on the board for this one. No, I'll come back to that. There's a thing I want to talk about with regards to the Bay and the Queen later, but that's my general answer. Because Vineo and Alamance were the two main battlegrounds of the Invader War, those two homelands changed the most in terms of their military. The sellswords were not the monolith that they are today before the war. The trade lords said, we're not gonna let that happen again. we're going to keep the sellswords on retainer. They were the most prepared at the time, and they got the contract of a lifetime, a sort of permanent contract as, the military for hire in Minion, which also didn't make all those smaller mercenary companies that disbanded after the start of the Delve. That didn't make them happy either, because the centralization of that force left them out of a job in a lot of cases. And that's another reason why a lot of their people went, all right, well, let's shop for a wagon. Anyway, next question.
Well, since you brought it up, let's see. How was the Eye of the Bay found?
How is the Eye of the Bay found? So, hold on. I am cartoonishly bad at this. I'm really glad that we decided not to go to a nail place. This is going to be it's going to have a lot of personality. I'll say that. Okay, how's the Eye of the Bay found? My answer to this question is the same as my answer to a lot of questions about how does state function work in the Bailick. The Bay doesn't. And that there are implications to that, partially because there are a lot of people who want stuff from the Bay, and the way to get stuff from the Bay, and by extension the Arnerian state, is to trick the Bay into thinking it's what he wants. Because and I'm going to talk more about this, but that's why I wrote on the board Bay/Queen. The difference between the Bay and the Queen as institutions is the Bailick is an absolute monarchy. The Bay is the first and last word in any decision. And while that is that is true for anything the Queen hears about, because it's a feudal monarchy, there's lots of stuff that happens, even big stuff that happens, that the Queen never hears about. And if that ever happened to the Bay, people would be executed. If some of the decisions that the Lords of Alamance make on their own happened in the Bailick, the Bay would be apoplectic. That he wasn't consulted. The Bay is probably the single busiest person in the Beast World, in some ways. And I think that's interesting to think about, because in a lot of ways, a lot of important ways, whether the Bay is effective or not comes down to luck, because he doesn't actually have time to digest all the information that he would have to digest to make these decisions and make them effectively, or even make them consistent. That's why he has these viziers. The Bay has the viziers because they are supposed to be as much part of him and the way that he thinks as he is, such that they are trusted when they bring something to him and they have to, boil it down to 3 sentences. They have to know the 3 sentences that they're going to say to him are the things that is relevant to his making his decision, right? And if you get it wrong, you're not a good Hand of the Bay or Eye of the Bay, and you don't want to be a bad Hand of the Bay, Eye of the Bay. It's bad for your health and your reputation.
Well, mostly your health.
In the case of Vartan, yeah, it's bad for your health. I think we tell a story about that in the book, about how the Vartan's Eye of the Bay didn't see the invaders coming, which is not fair. How could they have seen it? But they didn't see it coming, and that was a supreme embarrassment for Bay Vartan. And he executed them, because there was just no way that the Bay was going to keep respect with what those positions are if he just let them hang around, right? Even if he just fired them, there was no way that he was going to command respect in his court, letting them live. So he didn't. That's the difference between the Balic and Alamance. Alamance is, I mean, with the way that I framed it right here, you could say Alamance way more chill, but that's not actually true. What's true is the monarch doesn't have the same power, doesn't take the same power for themselves. And moreover, Alamance is used to this now. That's their modus operandi now. And if Sophia tried to change it, technically, she has the power. She could change the structure of the state and just say, now I'm the Bey. I'm like the Bey now. I'm the Bey of Alamance. But it wouldn't fly with the people who hold her levies, right?
Yeah.
And thus, she would be not long for this world if she were to try that. So those like frictions, that's like, what does a person have the power to do? What do they have the capability of doing? And what do they have the will to do? Are all like things that are different in the Balic elements. The end. Okay, next.
Let's see. Highest and lowest point in the beast world.
The highest point in the beast world is Tulivori. Tulivori is a fake mountain made by a weirdo to bully other people. No, it was the Red Dragon Maximus made his own mountain as in a gesture of compensation, and now he lives in the caldera of this volcano that he made by bringing up. Is it magma or lava?
It would be magma until it erupted.
Until it was in open air, right? By bringing up magma and turning into lava.
Transmutation.
Yeah. The lowest point. The lowest point in the Beast World is definitely in Dungeon Town. Because there are so many dungeons in Dungeon Town, and they are like persistently coming and going, they stack up on top of each other. And by on top of each other, I mean underneath each other. So, because they're all sort of concentrated in this very small amount of like physical real estate, like in terms of acreage, they go down instead of out. So, I don't know what it would be measured off the top of my head, but yeah, it's definitely in Dungeon Town. Naturally speaking, it's probably in Oria. It's probably in Oric Summerstone Mine, where the Summerstone just went down farther. The Loam Link is really low, but we know that the dungeon goes at least that deep because the Loam Link is having the problems that it's having. So yeah, it's got to be the dungeon.
Beautiful.
Oh man. I guess it's fine. As long as you don't look at it. No, I'm not. No, don't make it worse. Leave it alone. All right. Next. I think there's one more, right?
Yep, last question.
No, too much.
Did you calculate anything weird?
So I asked Rat this question too. I asked him to help me.
Oh, shit. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
This is a recording.
They know we have phones now.
Yeah, no big deal. I'm probably not going to edit this very much, but that's fine.
Except in post.
I'll fix it in post. I'll add a CG, not your phone alarm. Rat, what are some of the things we calculated when we did the book that didn't make it into the book but were kind of informative?
I mean, population density is.
Population density, you're so right. Yeah, Alar. Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah, we did. Oh, thank you so
man.
much for this. Yeah, are really good. Do you want to talk about that or you want me to?
You got it.
Okay. So,
Nightmares.
one of the things that we did a lot of work to figure out was whether Alar made logical sense. because Alar, there are not places in the real world that are like Alar, but there's nothing really that magical about Alar in terms of its basic like construction. The idea of a dock town that is the size of a city and stretches laterally super long and isn't that deep. There's not a lot of places like that in the real world. So we had to make sure that, oh man, all the homework that we did for Alar, we made sure that the square footage made sense, because we figured out, okay, if there's this many people per square mile and it's stretched along a coast, how long would the docks be? And it's not as bad as we thought. It's certainly like more than a day's walk, but you don't need to be within a day's walk of all of your city. And on that note, another thing that we did a lot of homework on was, can a dock town, a large dock town in Alar, feed itself? Can they fish enough, and can they forage enough to live the lifestyle that we were saying that they were living, and it makes sense, or are we going to have to rethink everything? I think we did these calculations for Jaegervault too. We did a bunch of work about like how big the underground farms would have to be, and how big do the farms need to be is a question we've had to ask ourselves a whole bunch of times. And the answer is really, really damn big, but not so big that I don't think, I mean, maybe I'm overlooking something that's impossible. And if I am, I want to know, tell me, because I'm fascinated to know if I made a mistake. But I don't think that any of the cities in the Beast World couldn't exist in the real world. The motivations would have to be way different, because the reason we don't build cities that look like that is because we don't need to. We just build it on the land. So the motivations are way different. It's a lot of unnecessary work in terms of survival, but they have other reasons for doing it. Yeah, I think that's how big do the farms need to be, and can they afford to feed themselves? I did the same thing for Litfeld. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know how many gallons of water Litfeld carries with it through the Balik, so that people stay alive and the horses don't die. Yeah, we do a lot of work about food, because I think it's a really like the most important and interesting part of world building is like, if you're going to make a weird city, like people are going to be fascinated to hear how they eat in that city. I think so. And that's it. Okay, so I did this really, to call it lackluster is to do that word a disservice. But they are all technically this is so clownish. Why did I alternate the colors? That's such a bad idea.
Because we told you to.
Well, we suggested.
I mean, that's
it,
true.
And you were like, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do it that way. Okay, I guess that's fine. I kept my promise. I painted my nails because we funded. I hope
You did it.
I did it. I hope that you'll fund our next campaign. We're gonna launch it soon. We have to launch it soon because we can't pay rent if we don't.
Join us next time when we paint Bean's face.
Yeah. Alternating colors.
Stripy clown, yeah.
Yeah. I think if I painted my face orange and blue, I would look like I was from the movie Braveheart. I said oldly.
I don't think they were orange and blue.
Was it orange and blue? It wasn't orange and blue?
I think they were white and blue.
Oh. What sports team is orange and blue?
You would look like a Broncos fan.
Broncos fan.
The worst one.
The worst one.
Yeah.
Oh, careful.
Bonus question.
But
Value
clown
question.
name?
get out of here. All right. See you next time.